The line of fire. And then I want to measure the time that these things are going. And then when we get to the wall, I want to measure the placement of the wall. He's good at that.
He cracks me up.
I'll tell you in a minute. Max,
Yes,
you
sir.
can be looking.
Yes. At who?
Take a lot of pictures.
I'm going to take pictures too.
Too many buttons for me. Are we here? So, I'm going to tell you what's going on here while we're waiting. So right now we are igniting, or I guess I'm igniting, 4 Class B brands. We're going to put one brand on each one of these decks. So, the decks. This is Trex Fire Defense. It's a 7A compliant decking product. This is that brand, the edge mark I was talking about during the talk. You can come over and look at this. You're welcome to walk around these anytime. This is another product called Evergreen. It does comply with 7A, but this deck doesn't because I bought it a couple of years ago. So all of these decks have been weathering for the last year outside. Then there's 2 redwood decks. The deck closest to the building has a stain just applied yesterday, and then the other deck is no stain applied. Both of these decks have been weathering for the last year also outside. Okay? So 4 decks total, 2 plastic composite materials, and 2 solid wood redwood decks. On the then we have a wall section at the far end. It is fiber decking product. It's called as hardboard siding. One is just the siding applied direct to the studs, and the other side is siding applied to sheathing applied to studs. We're going to look at the importance of sheathing in resisting penetration of the fire. And we can also then observe flame spread up the wall and penetration through the lap joint into what would be the stud cavity. So when you get to those are going to be 2A brands that are going to be put at the base of those walls. We'll do that when we finish here. I'm going to take care of this for a minute. I need 4 volunteers to carry these to the deck. So when I place the brands on the deck, you start. Plastics on our side. So these brands have now been ignited for 5 minutes. We're going to move them over here. Are those that Class A roofing? fire retardant. One. Fire retardant Trex on this one right here. And then the Evergreen here. 7A compliant, not. And then this is the deck with the stain, just stained yesterday. So on this one, we want to compare the size of the fire, the quickness with which it grows, if it does grow, relative to the untreated, and maybe smoke development. Look at that, too. Okay. So all of these decks are they take a while, minute. Just observe how long it takes for a fire to get big, if in fact it's going to get big, or how long it takes to go out, if it's going to go out. You Ukiah fire guys. Okay. Look at the oil one. It's starting to. It has an impact here. Now I'm going. Well. We're going to let these burn for a little while before I ignite the A-brands and do the wall thing. So we're going to just watch these for a little while. Okay, so again, the deck that I'm standing nearest, this is Trex Fire Defense. Trex makes some products that comply and some products that don't. So if you want the one that complies, you have to ask for Fire Defense. That's their brand name for the Trex products that comply. Evergreen, their products just comply, but this because of how long ago I bought this product, it doesn't comply, but they do make a compliant product now. All of them do, if it has that name. Redwood complies. They've passed the test. There's a heat release rate requirement, amount of energy that is released when the deck burns. It has to meet a minimum amount of energy that is released when the thing burns. Redwood complies, as do these products here. The test is done on untreated material. So we're going to see if this is a big deal or not. So Redwood, and then on my left. Trex, Evergreen, Redwood with a stain, oil-based stain. And I really encourage you to walk around and look. You can, don't get close enough to burn yourself, but it's interesting, I think, to see how things start burning.
The cracks are what did it.
Okay, that one was Trex?
Yes, every one of them.
It's 102 degrees out here. That's what this thing says. It could be close to the fire. It's even hotter.
What were the two differences?
Yeah, so actually, good point, thank you. In order to just give you an idea of how decking performs, all of these decks are next to just normal sheetrock. So the paper is combustible, but the rest of the gypsum wallboard isn't. So you're going to get an idea of the deck by itself. You can do a comparison of decking products without having to worry about how the siding may or may not be contributing.
The important thing is don't stain your deck the day before a wildfire.
You got it in stain.
Somebody said you said a month later.
No, my take on it is that the stain will wear away. So a month later, it may not be such a big deal.
Well, what I noticed on all four of these is a crack between the boards. That's probably the fire right now.
So,
All four.
your name is, I'm sorry? Richard has a good point. He said he's noticed that it's really the gaps between the boards where you have the bigger fire happening. And when we're doing research on deck performance, we actually made decks that did not have a gap, and it is exactly that. The gap is really important. But you need a gap for why? Water. Yeah. So you cannot not have a gap. And even with the plastic composites, they have a thermal expansion coefficient that you need to take into account. So you cannot even not gap those. So you've got to have a gap. The problem with gaps also is that you can have debris to build up in the gap, which will sort of help. So you can keep that. It sort of becomes a never-ending job around your house to keep things maintained. But keeping your gaps clear of debris is also a good idea if you can find the time to do that. Progress report. So let's see. Everything is burning still. It looks like the stain is having a negative impact on fire, so bigger fire with the stain on the redwood. The evergreen, the non-7A compliant deck looks like it's a little bit more of a fire than the compliant deck. We're going to be watching this over time. CAL FIRE guides, how long here? Plastic?
645.
645 since the brands have been put on. You're going to have to be willing to hang here for another 30 minutes to actually see whether it gets big or goes out. And
6 minutes, 30 seconds.
okay, so roughly about the same amount of time. I'll just say, sort of front load this. Often the wood deck, the untreated wood deck, goes out quicker, let's say. And the size of the fire is smaller in terms of footprint. We'll see. Actually, when you compare the fire defense and redwood, it sort of depends on the day, but they're pretty comparable, it seems, based on doing these a number of times in various places. One thing I have noticed is that the weather of the given day really has an impact of how big the fire is going to be, and that sort of makes sense. If I'm doing this on a cool day, or like one day when I tried to do this and walked outside to do it and there was like 5 inches of snow on them, that sort of discourages it. But a day like today, I did this in Southern California on a really hot day, and it was a pretty nice big fire. Pretty interesting. Okay, so actually these are going to just sit there and chunk along. So I'm going to ignite the 2A brands. Yes, ma'am.
One question.
Sure.
With those variations of weather, is the relative performance of the wood versus the check still proportionally about the same?
So the question is, that's a good question, thank you. Even if you take sort of weather out of it, or if you put weather in, is the relationship still the same? And the relationship is still the same. Yeah. Okay, so what I've actually seen is that